Good afternoon, everybody. This is Kevin Askew, Senior Sales Manager at Programmer's Paradise, and welcome to Embarcadero's webinar, Simple Solutions for Developing PHP Web and Facebook Applications, Part 2. After a brief introduction on Programmer's Paradise, I'll then turn things over to Al Mannarino, who will handle the webinar, followed by a questions and answers period, and then the summary. Programmer's Paradise is a leading e-seller of developer and infrastructure tools. We are an Embarcadero reseller under two segments of our worldview. The first one is under Application Lifecycle Management with RAD Studio and JBuilder. The second is under our database worldview with DB Artisan and ER Studio. Under our ALM worldview, it includes industry-leading tools for your end-to-end development needs, including defining, designing, developing, testing, deploying, and managing. We can be found on the web at www.programmers.com. Without any further ado, I will now turn things over to Al Mannarino to start things off. Al?
Wonderful. So I believe everyone can hear me, so that's great. So hello, and welcome to our Simple Solutions for Developing PHP Web and Facebook Applications webinar. So my name is Al Mannarino, and I'm an Embarcadero Principal Software Consultant. Also joining us on this webinar is Mr. Craig Leiser, and he's your National Channel Sales Manager. So in this webinar, we are going to learn what is PHP, what is Embarcadero's RAD PHP XE product, why use RAD PHP for web and Facebook applications, and then next we're going to get right into the RAD PHP XE IDE and demonstrate some of the PHP examples, how to use the RAD PHP Component Library to drag and drop components onto our web application for rapid application development. We're going to see how to connect and work with databases with our web application, and then how to develop Facebook applications using RAD PHP XE. So I'm thinking I'm going to create a Facebook application that uses our database and show how you can do rapid application development using the RAD PHP components. And then after the demonstrations, I'm going to go back and show you a few slides that show the new features of RAD PHP XE. And then we're going to leave about 10 minutes at the end for any questions and answers and go over our next steps. So first, what is PHP? So PHP is a widely used open source web scripting language that is frequently used by web developers for the creation of forums and web applications because it helps them create dynamic web applications with solid database connectivity. So there are over 20 million PHP servers worldwide, serving up a lot of content on the web. Everything from websites like Wikipedia, like you see here, to the most used blogging software, such as WordPress, as you see here, to social news websites like Dig. And Dig was made for people to discover and share content from anywhere on the internet. So with all of these sites using PHP, there must be something about PHP that helps web developers get their job done better and faster. So what is RAD PHP XE? So Embarcadero's RAD PHP XE, it revolutionizes PHP web and Facebook development with a completely integrated rapid visual development approach and component framework. So RAD PHP has a powerful editor, a debugger, visual development tools, and connectivity with all of the leading databases. So the integrated reusable class library includes components for everything from user interface design to building applications for Facebook. And if you're wondering why you should consider using RAD PHP XE compared to other PHP editors, well, some of the key benefits would be you're going to definitely get faster development using all of the drag and drop visual components. It's going to be easier to build data-driven applications. You're going to get reusability of all of the millions of lines of code of open source PHP code available today. You're going to have the ability to create AJAX-enabled websites, You'll get consistency by using the RAD PHP component libraries. And you get all of this in one IDE for visual design, editing of your code, debugging, profiling, and database connectivity. And the IDE is also flexible, so you can customize it to meet your programming styles, so everything from the colors and the keyboard mappings to language and encodings. So this is what RAD PHP looks like. So it's a rapid application development tool for building and deploying both web and Facebook applications using the PHP language. So RAD PHP for PHP development is the only visual rapid application development environment for PHP. So there are other PHP development environments that may include a visual HTML designer, but only RAD PHP provides a visual designer that incorporates HTML and HTML templates with visual PHP components that you can drag and drop to create user interfaces and database connectivity. So it also has an integrated component class library that lets developers quickly and visually create PHP web applications and integrate PHP open source packages, source code, and components. And for Facebook applications, RAD PHP includes these 16 Facebook visual components, and then there's another 4 Facebook social plugins like we see on the screen here, such as the like button, the activity feed, and the live stream. And we're going to get into all of the details throughout this webinar. So why is it important to develop Facebook applications? Well, because Facebook is the leading social networking site. So Facebook is increasingly being used as a platform for all types of applications, including games, marketing promotions, business applications, and utilities. Building applications to run on Facebook opens opportunities for developers to reach an audience of more than 500 million users. And according to Facebook, every month, more than 70% of Facebook users engage with some platform application. So if you haven't tried developing applications for Facebook yet, the process can be much easier than you think. And we'll show how to do this throughout this webinar. So the one question I need to ask you right now is, how many of you have ever played the Mafia Wars or the Farmville game on Facebook? So the last I checked this morning, over 28 million people are playing the Farmville game on Facebook. So that's amazing. So for demonstrations, I want to show how quickly you can create web and Facebook applications using RAD PHP. So this slide shows 2 applications. So the one on the bottom left is the PHP open source OS Commerce online merchant application. So it's a complete PHP online store solution that can be easily installed and configured on any web server. So it's a traditional PHP application that you can import into RAD PHP and use all of the advanced RAD PHP programming tools like refactoring, cross-language debugging, remote debugging, profiling, syntax highlighting, and error insight. Now the application on the bottom right, that's the Facebook application we created using RAD PHP, and it's actually deployed on the Facebook network. So you could actually run it yourself and see what shows your friends are watching. So my goal is to try to walk you through how to create a Facebook web application like this, and then we're going to add some of the Facebook social plugins like the activity feed, the live stream, and the like button onto the application. So let's say in the next 40 minutes, we should be able to cover everything from how to set up this application in the Facebook network to creating the application and gathering information from our Facebook users and friends. So at this point, I want to stop showing the slides, and I want to be able to share my desktop. Okay. So the hope is you can now see RAD PHP.
Yep, you're good to go.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. All right, so this is what RAD PHP looks like. So when you fire it up, this is what it looks like. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a Facebook application. And I want to create a Facebook application that's going to let our friends on Facebook let us know what TV shows they're watching and what episodes of those TV shows they're watching. So to do that, I'm going to come up and say File, New. I'll go to Other. And this lists all the different types of PHP projects I can create. So in my case, I want to pick Facebook application. So by picking Facebook application, the IDE is going to create the basic skeleton for a Facebook application. So as we see, it has one basic form here, and it also has a data module with a Facebook component. So the Facebook component, that lets me connect to Facebook and use all of the Facebook APIs. It also lets me add the Facebook application ID and the application secret property I need that's going to uniquely identify this application on Facebook. So now the next thing I want to do is I need to go up to Facebook, my Facebook developers account, and get my application ID and password. So if you haven't done this before, let me do this quickly. I'm going to go up to Facebook. So it's facebook.com developers. You'll log in, and you need a Facebook account to be able to do this. So if you don't have a Facebook account, you would need one to do this. So I created a couple. So when you do this for the first time, go to facebook.com/developers. You'll click this button to set up a new application. I created one called My TV Shows. When we go to My TV Shows, it's going to give you a unique ID for your application ID and your application secret. So I want to take those two properties and add it to my form here. So I'm going to take my application ID, simply copy it, and move it over here to my property. And I need to take my application secret property, which is here, select it, and drop it onto the page. Now there's another property here called render method. Now if I go back to my Facebook developers, so when I created this My TV Shows application, I chose for my canvas, I want to use the Facebook markup language. The other option is to use iframe. So I need to set my property to use Facebook markup language. So I'm coming over here to my render method, and I'm going to select the Facebook markup language. So that's all we really need from the Facebook side. So that's great. So now I'm going to go back to my main form. So like I said, what we want to do is we want to create an application that's going to let people search for TV shows and then select the episodes they're watching. So the first thing I want to do is I want to drop a title on here that tells us what we're doing. So going over to my tool palette. So here's my tool palette that has all of the RAD PHP component libraries. So I can drag and drop components from the palette onto the page. So the first thing I'm going to grab is a label, drop that onto the page. And for the caption for the label, I want to change its title. So by changing its title, you see it invokes an HTML editor here. So I'm going to call this my TV shows developed using RAD PHP. RAD PHP XE. And it's a full HTML editor, so I can select the text. I can make it bold. I can change its color. I'm going to pick a pretty color here. Say OK. Say OK here. Resize it over here. And then if I go to its properties, I can change its font. Let's say instead of 11 pitch, I'm going to make it 16 pitch. So we have a nice title here. I also want to put a nice image on the page. So up to my tool palette, I want to search for an image component. So I see an image component. Drop that onto the page. And for its source, the source for this image. So I have my image here. I need to get to its data source. Where does it come from? So the image source right here. So I'll just point to the location of where your image is. So I'm going to load it from my desktop. So I keep my images here under all of my logos. So here we have my logo for my TV shows, and as it should be, I also have my logo for programmers at Embarcadero. But I'm going to select my TV shows logo, say OK to that, and say OK here. So now I have a nice logo on my page. Okay, so far so good. So the beauty of this is, I have not had to write a single line of PHP code. As I'm drag and dropping these components onto the page, it's developing the code for me in my code section. So once again, I want to write an application that lets people search for TV shows. So I'm going to drop another label on here. And this label is going to say, back to my caption, back to my HTML editor. I want this label to say, search for a TV show. And we'll just keep it the way it is. Make it a little bigger. Okay, search for a TV show. Now we're going to drop an edit box. So if I look for an edit box, which is here, I want people to be able to edit some strings that the TV show starts with. And I could also change its name. Instead of calling it a edit box 1, I'm going to call it my edit search box. And I want to drop another button on here. And I want to change the name of that button. I'm going to call this my button for search. So I'm going to label it button search. And I want to put some text on that button that says, click this button to find TV shows. Search for TV shows. So that goes on the button. So what we're going to do here, so the goal behind this is when the user runs this application, they're going to enter in this text box like a TV show they watch, like NCIS or 2.5 Men, and they're going to click this search for TV shows, and we want to call an iTunes web service that will search for those TV shows and give us a list of what we want to watch and then select its episode. Okay, so now while we're up here, let's add some of the Facebook components on here. So it's going to be a Facebook application. So while we're searching for our TV shows, let's see, let's put I'm going to add a like button on here. So as people are running the application, they're going to let us know, do they like this application or do they not like this application. I'm also going to add an activity feed. So activity feed says I'm on my Facebook account. It's going to ask me, what are my friends doing that are connected to me. And for this component of activity feed, there's an option to also add the header. So right now the header is set to false. When I change the header from false to true, you'll see it add a nice little recent activity header up there. And the last thing I want to drop on here is a live stream. So this become a live stream where you can post messages on your wall. All right. So now the goal of this, so people are going to run our application. Now we want to know, we want to collect some information when people are running this application. We want to collect the user ID of the individual running the application. We want to collect the ID of the TV show and the ID of the episode. So to do that, we want to add a database to this application. So RAD PHP makes connecting to database really easy. So under the Data Explorer tab, you'll see the 9 most popular databases here, right? Sybase, DB2, Informix, Firebird, MS SQL, MySQL, and Oracle. So on my box, I have 2 databases set up. I have an Interbase database and a MySQL database. So what's great about this is if you've never done this before, for the database of choice, you'll select it, you'll modify its connection. So you give it the connection string to connect to that database, test it, make sure it works. So that's great. Then once it works, you can do things like under Interbase, I have a database called TV shows. I want to bring up a SQL window because I want to take a look at some of the tables in there. So right now there's one table in there called shows. And if I drag that out there, so I want to use this Interbase shows table to gather the ID of the user running the application, the ID of the show, and the number of the episodes. So if I take a look at a table that has more data, I'm going to open up a SQL window for the employee database. see here we have all of the tables that are under the employee database and all of the stored procedures that are in there. Now I can do great things like I want to take a look at the employees, and I want to take a look at the department table, and it's smart enough to connect the two tables together. So it gives you this nice ER visual diagram of what the tables look like with all the joins and the relationships. If I go under the Code tab, it shows me the SQL statement that it will execute to get information from both the employee and the department table. So in this case, we're doing an inner join. The Design tab gives me the ER relational diagram, and the Data tab actually runs that query and gives me data. So this is a great way to connect data inside of RAD PHP to quickly look at the data and find out what the data is like. So now I need to add this to I want to add this database to my application. So I'm going to come out of here. So I'm going to use my data module for this. So I'm going to go back to my data module. And for this application, I want to take the TV show database that has the shows table on it. So I want to take the shows table and I want to add that to my TV shows application. So by simply selecting the table shows and dropping it onto my data module form, it automatically drops the database component, the table component, and the data source component. And the data source component with all of its methods allows me to insert, update, and delete and browse information in that database. So that's great, and all of the properties are already set for me, so I don't have to take care of setting any of these properties, connecting them all together. So that's all you really need to do to add a database to your existing application, and then use the data source methods to actually access and manipulate the data. All right, at this point, I'm going to save what I've done so far. So I want to come up here and say File. I want to save this project. Now there's two files, right? My Unit 9, I want that to be my main index PHP that gets launched, and my data module, I'm going to rename it to something like data module main. So the first thing I like to do is put everything in a separate folder. So I'm going to call a new folder. I'm going to call this my Programmers TV Show application. That's the folder. And instead of this thing being called Unit 9, I want this to be my main index. And instead of Unit 8, I want this to be my data module main. So this is the convention I use. And for the project, I'm going to call it my Programmers TV Show project. So that takes care of that. So right now we're looking at the designer. If I switch it over to the Code tab, you'll see the PHP code being generated. Now this is important. So 100% pure PHP code is being generated. So any platform that supports PHP code, you can deploy this application to. Now this Unit 9, I renamed it to Data Module Main. So I want to say I want to require once Data Module Main. Let's save all of that. And at this point, I could probably run this application. You know what I'm going to do? When I eventually, if I go back to my design and I look to see where my logo is, right now my logo is in some remote location somewhere. So I want to, now that I created a new folder, I want to put that logo in the folder so everything is self-contained. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to come to my, I'm going to grab that logo, which lives in my logos. I'm going to take my TV show's logo, copy it. And this I want to drop into my project that I just created. So on RAD PHP, projects get created here. I want to find my Programmers TV Show folder. So right now, these are the only files that got created that we need to deploy this. I'm going to paste it in here. So I got my logo now with all of my other files. And now I'm going to change the location to the local location. So I want to load it, and it already knows I'm in Programmers TV Shows. Select it there, and OK. So that part's done. So at this point, I can actually run this application. So the beauty about running this application, it also ships with its own built-in Apache web container. So it fires up in its own local Apache web container. So we see our logo, TV shows developed using RAD PHP, activity feed, but we're missing our live activity feed here. So what it's asking for, if I go back to that Facebook live stream, you see there's a property here for application ID. So I'm going to go back to my data module, my Facebook application. I'm going to grab the application ID because I only want to be able to see live feed from my application ID. Go back to my index page, and I'm going to drop it in here, save all of that. So now when I run this, not only should we see our recent activity, but we should also see the property feed. So let's see where that's coming from. Because I'm not logged on, that's why we're not seeing that. Okay. Oh no, I didn't. So somehow it didn't get saved. So let's go back there again. This is good to show. I want to take application ID from my Facebook. I want to come over to my component here, drop it in there. Okay, now it's saved. Save it all. Now let's run it now. So now when I run it, we get our live feed and our activity feed. So that's all great. So now we've all heard about privacy issues with Facebook and people getting access to people's information when they shouldn't have. So the first thing we want to do is, before anyone's able to run this application, we want to make sure that that person's logged in. So right now, because of my machine, because I logged into Facebook, it knows me as being logged in. But we want to make sure people are logged in before they use this application. So what I'm saying is, before this form actually gets displayed on anybody's screen, I want to make sure that user is actually logged in. And to do that, we're going to use one of the Facebook methods that's called require logged user. And how I want to do that is, so right now I'm on the main form and we see all of its properties. We also have events for that form, and there's an event called onCreate, meaning before this form gets created, I want to execute looking to make sure this person's logged in. So on its onCreate, which brings up its method here. Now here's where we can use our Facebook application API. So what we did here is we created Facebook application wrappers that we created inside of RAD PHP to access all of Facebook's APIs and Facebook's SDK. So the first thing I want to do is declare a global, and I want to use our Facebook application. So I want to use our Facebook application. So once again, this is a wrapper that we created inside of RAD PHP that lets me access all of Facebook's APIs and all of Facebook's SDK. So I want to call this method that's called require logged user. So there's a method called required logged user. So require logged user. So that's the method we want to run. So what this is going to say is, when the screen gets created, the first thing I want to check for is to make sure the user is logged in. If the user is not logged in, I want to force them to log in. So if we save all of this and we run this form again, so run the form. The fact I'm still logged in. Okay, 27. Require logged user. I spelled it wrong. Who was supposed to check me? Require logged LOGG. Okay. So it's not required logged user. Let's go back to page create. All I was missing was the dash there. I want to call it require. Yeah. So that's what's nice about this is, before we saw it highlighted in gray. Now that it's highlighting in blue, it tells me it's a valid method. Valid logged user. Okay, so the error messages go away. Now it's happy. Let's save all of that. Let's run the application now. So the fact I'm already logged in, it doesn't prompt me to log in, but if I log myself out, And now if I run the application as me being logged out, it's now going to force me to log in. So I'm not logged in, so I don't see any activity here because I need to log in here and I need to log in here. So now if I connect using my Facebook account and I log in, so now that one method says, required the user to be logged in. So now that I'm logged in here, I can also log into my recent activity and get that information also. So a very, very powerful method to require people to log in. And there's many more methods built into that. So for example, if I want to grab the user's ID, so now that I got the user to log in, there's another method called get the user's ID. So that will bring back the user's ID. So when I run this application, I want to grab this user's ID and add that into my database. So not only can you run applications, you can also put breakpoints on the application. And like I said, this is 100% pure PHP code, so if I want to put comments on thing or any PHP code, I can put that right into the application. So right now, let's put a breakpoint on this Facebook application here. So now when I run the application, it'll stop at this breakpoint, and we can actually walk through the code and see what it does. So run the application, stops at that breakpoint. So here we see all our local variables, all our global variables, any watches we want to set. For example, if I want to see this variable Facebook application, highlight it, come up here, add a watch. I want to see what's going on with this Facebook application, required user to log in. And then I can step into the methods. So I can step into it. So as you see, we step into it. It brings up our Facebook include wrapper that we created. So this saves you all the trouble of having to call, get session, and so this will do it all for us. So as you step through it, it takes care of all of the everything that's involved to get the session and make sure this user is logged in. So we got step out, step over, step in. Okay, so I'm gonna come out of the debugger. That's just a quick look at the debugger and what you can do with it. I also like this feature. I want to close all the pages that were open while debugging. So now we're back to where we were. Okay. All right. I think I got I want a hard stop in about 10 minutes. So I'm going to try to move through this quicker. So hopefully this gave you a quick idea on how quickly you can create a Facebook application and drop some components onto the page without having to do very little code to get a Facebook application built. So let's say we finally completed this application, we got it all built. Now we want to deploy it out to our web container. So coming up here to Tools, we have a deployment wizard. So as the deployment wizard says, it's going to collect all of our project files, all of the visual component library components that we use. It's going to gather all that information and save it into one folder, and then we can take that one folder and upload it to our Apache web server that's running PHP, or any web server that understands PHP, and we could run the application that way. So if I continue next here, let's say I'm going to save this into my programmers. Save this in my programmers TV show files. We'll say next. So these are all the files that are needed that get packaged up into one folder that I can now drop onto my own web container to run this. And if we go look at what we just created, I put that under programmers, TV shows files. So it's really just one folder. So all of the RAD PHP component libraries that we used in that are contained in this folder. So pretty much you're taking this one folder and dropping it up there. So if you're not familiar how the Facebook development works, if we go back to the page, which I still think I'm on, nope. Just a quick on how this all works. So when people are going to run this application on Facebook, they're going to call it by apps.facebook.com TV shows me. But the actual application that we created, that sits on your own web container. So in my case, this is my lab in Toronto, Canada, where I have it living on there in a folder called TV shows. So when people click on apps.facebook.com TV shows me, it's really running the application that's on my local box here. But the good part is I'm still gathering all that information, so I'm able to get their IDs and the TV shows they're watching and all that good information. So that's how that works. Okay. All right. So I can continue with this. So if we got time, let me show you a few more things we can do. So right now we showed you a Facebook application, but let's take a switch on just a regular web RAD PHP application, what that looks like. And if we have time at the end, I'll drop in the iTunes web service to the search for TV shows button, and I'll show you how that works. So at this point, let me just close this right now. And I'm going to come over here again and say File, New. This time I want to create just a regular web application, a RAD PHP web application. I'll select that. And just like we saw before, we have our main form here. So let's say for this application, we want to say something like, I want to be able to locate some cities and states using Google Maps. So just like we did before, I'm going to drop a label on here. And just like we did before on this properties, for its caption, bring up the HTML editor. I'm going to call this my locate city and state. City and state using Google Maps. And just like we did before, we can change its color and make it bold and all that good stuff. Okay. And just like we did before, right, we can change its font. And while we're in here, let's give it a bigger font. Okay, font is down here. Instead of 1 pitch, that's too small. Let me make it 16 pitch. All right, that's better. So what we want to do here is I'm going to drop some an edit box, a button, and a list box on here. So going over to my my components, first thing I want to drop is an edit box. So we're going to enter the city state here. I'm going to drop a button. And when we click this button, it's going to pass the city and state to our Google map to show us where we are. And I want to drop a list box on here. So any cities and states we put in there will get dropped into this list box. And so we include the Google Map component on here. So if I go down here to Google, I drop the Google Map component onto the page. Let's make that look large. Okay. So now when I click on this button, I want to take whatever I put into this edit box, drop it into my list box, and also update the map with that city and state. So right now, by default, in the address, it shows Scotts Valley, California. So when I double-click on this button here, it takes me into its button click event or method. And once again, keep in mind, this is 100% now pure PHP code. So if we look at here, we're saying, right, require once our RAD PHP Component Library, add the Google Maps component also, our standard controls, any external controls, and our forms controls. So that's put in there for me. So at this point, I can say I want to take the list box, and we also give you all of the code completion. So if I type list box, find me the list box. It already knows that list box is a local variable, so it put the dis in front of it already. So for list box, and you get all that code completion, code insight here. So for list box, I want to add item, and into that item, I want to take whatever we put into that edit box, and I want to grab its text. Okay, and that. So that's going to say whatever I type into that edit box, add it into my list box. And now that we have it, I go up to Google. So I'm going to use my Google One component. And once again, it's a local variable, so it puts the dis in front of it. So this Google Map 1. Here I want to set the address. And that address needs to be equal to whatever I put into that edit box, which is pretty much the same as this. So take whatever you see inside of that edit box and add it to my address. Close that. All the errors go away, so it's happy. And just to clean myself up, I'm going to put edit here. Edit 1. So this edit 1, whatever text I put in there, I just want to set it to null. All right, so that should be all we need here. So now, keep in mind, so there's the code to do this. Here's the design. So when we run this, it's first going to ask me to save all of the files. So let me say, put it once again in a new folder. Let's call this my programmers Google Maps. Instead of calling this Unit 8, I'm going to call it my index. And let's just call this programmers Google Map project. So it should run just like we saw before. It should fire itself up in its own web container. Right now we're looking at Scotts Valley. Me, myself, right now, I'm in lovely New York City, New York. So I'm going to say click on that. Take New York City, New York, drop it into the list box, and display where I am here in New York. So I'm here in New York. It's about 20 degrees outside, freezing cold with a wind chill, maybe about -10. So where I really want to be is, I want to be in Paradise Island in the Bahamas. So let's find ourselves Paradise Island in the Bahamas. So that's where I really wish I was right now. All right, so at this point, that's pretty much what I wanted to show as far as a demonstration. So I want to stop the demonstration part. I want to go back to the actual slides and just take you through a few slides just to kind of show you what's new in RAD PHP. And this is pretty much going to be a repeat or a recap of what we already saw. So we saw by using the so when you first come into RAD PHP, you're going to use the file new, and here's where you're going to be able to create all your new projects and all your access. So we saw how you can create a Facebook application. We saw how you can create a RAD PHP Component Library application for blank projects. So if you have existing PHP code and you want to drop it into RAD PHP, you would pick the blank project. You can also create a web server using the SOAP server application. So any PHP files, cascading style sheets, HTML, documents, templated forms, where you can have both a separate template file that has all your HTML templated forms in addition to the components. That's also available from the object gallery. We saw two-way development, so we can use the visual drag and drop components onto the page, and as we drop the components onto the page, it updated our PHP code. Any changes we make to the PHP code is automatically going to update our design also. So full two-way visual development. There's an F6 key, so if you're new to this RAD PHP IDE, by pressing the F6 key, it brings up full IDE insight. So any feature function you're looking for, like templated forms or Facebook application, type it into the IDE Insight, and it'll take you to the help for that individual component. Okay, we saw the fully structured pane. So as we're writing the code, we got Error Insight to help us correct any errors we have for error completion and code completion. We saw the fully integrated project and property inspector, where we can set both the properties and the events of all of our components. We saw the complete PHP-based component set. So it's about 140 visual components we've added into it. So everything from standard components, buttons and text edits and list boxes, to Google components, to Facebook components. We also added some Quackstrop components. You'll see some JS calendar. So like I said, in total, it's about 135 of these visual components that you can drag and drop onto the page to create both these web and PHP and Facebook applications. We saw the project manager. So as we created it, we had a new project. We also support project groups, so you can have projects inside of projects. You may have like the client side and the middle tier side and the server side as 3 separate projects, but they can all be included together as one project group. and then you would activate the project you're working on. We saw the very powerful Data Explorer. So connect it to your existing database, bring up the SQL window, show me visually what the tables look like, run SQL against that table and show me the data. It's a very powerful Data Explorer. And then if I want to add a table and database to my application, simply drag it from the Database Explorer onto my form, and it's done for me. So that's really powerful. We saw the fully integrated debugger, put breakpoints into the code, run it in the debugger, see my call stacks, see my local variables, my watch lists, and we also enhanced the debugger to include event logs, breakpoint lists, and messages. We saw how to use the deployment wizard to package up all of the files for deployment. There's also a documentation wizard that will fully document the PHP application, listing all of its components and all of its methods, fully hyperlinked to find it, to post it. We spoke briefly about this. There's also, so with RAD PHP, you can also create a RAD PHP client to talk to existing Delphi and or C++ DataSnap middle tier layers. So how that works is, so let's say this is my middle tier Delphi and or C++ DataSnap middle tier layer talking to my backend database. So I took all of my stored procedures, all of my business methods that I want to expose to the front-end clients. So now I can create RAD PHP front-end clients, Delphi and or C++ Win32 and or VCL for the web front-end clients. I can also create Delphi Prism.NET clients, and all of them can talk to that Delphi, C++, DataSnap middle tier layer to access data from the back end. So to kind of summarize, so this kind of ends what I plan to cover. So hopefully we saw how you can use RAD PHP XE to rapidly create web and Facebook applications using its visual editing capabilities. And RAD PHP also provides existing PHP developers with a powerful IDE with an integrated debugger. So even if you're not interested in any of the RAD PHP Visual Component Library applications, nor in any visual development, you can still use it for your PHP development by using its refactoring, cross-language debugging, remote debugging, profiling, syntax highlighting, and error insight. And to add any of this visual design to your existing PHP code and use all of the rapid PHP component libraries, you'll simply just create new pages and include all of your existing application functionality and methods into those pages. So I thank you for listening, and now we're going to open up this webinar to any questions you might have.
All right, thanks, Al. We actually, right now, if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A in the box on your screen, and we'll ask them to him. We're just wondering, somebody's asking if you have any of the your PHP files posted anywhere or available anywhere so that he can see the code and the canvases that you're actually demonstrating.
Yes.
Do you have the
Yes, very good question. So that TV show application I just showed, that ships with RAD PHP. So if you go into the RAD PHP demos folder, you will see that completed TV shows application built there, and that Google Map one also lists as a sample inside of the product. So I do see here a question here, where do the files and database live in the Facebook world? Is it on my server or Facebook? So great question. So none of these files and or database live on the Facebook network. It's all going to live on your own local hosted web server. So you're going to take your database and your files, and they're all going to live on your local hosted database. So if I still have that screen up here, if we look at this here, so you're going to take, so that TV shows application I created on my local box, which is on this, it's on this server in our Embarcadero Toronto lab. There's my host name with a folder called TV shows _me. So underneath my, so in my, I have a Apache web server with PHP added to it. So I take all of these files that I created, and I drop them into this folder called TV shows _me, including all the database connectivity. So when you move this application over, to your web server. All of that database connectivity, you're going to modify the connections to point to your local database. But then when folks run the application on Facebook, they actually call it as apps.facebook.com TV shows, and by calling it, it really forwards it to your local web server, and it runs your application that way.
Okay, and we have a question about what other frameworks for CSS or JS that weren't listed on your sidebar?
So if we look, so that's a great question too. If we fire up PHP, if we look over here, file, close all.
And you can, if you want to share your desktop again, Al, you can do that.
Oh, sorry.
If you need to.
Share my desktop. So if we look over here for file, so the question is, what other frameworks do we adhere to? So if we go up to new, other, if we look at web documents, so we fully support, cascading style sheets, HTML, XML. So that's all here for PHP files, units, frames, templated forms. So anything that's RAD PHP 5.x and greater, we support. And when we showed all of this, if we open up one of these files here, all of this RAD PHP Component Library. So this is a class library that wraps open source PHP scripts and libraries, including you see down here Quackstro. We also include ADODB, Dynam API, Smarty, XAjax, and the JS Calendar, and some others to create all of these visual component libraries that supports all this great drag and drop visual development of PHP applications. So the good part is that all of this is 100% written in PHP. It's all written in PHP, and so you as developers, you can create and integrate components into this IDE to extend the existing components to fit your needs. So this component library also includes components from the Zend. So we got Zend framework in here also, Facebook framework, and Google's Map. All right, so hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, and is there or will there be soon a book available for learning how to use this product?
Wonderful. So yeah, so as we speak, so as we speak, if we go back to sharing my desktop, share the desktop, back to PHP, under help, we got RAD PHP help is our book for now, which has everything about user's guide, developer's guide, getting started, and how to actually write your own components, the database developer's guide. So in here is probably a good place to start. Everything from getting started to a tour of the IDE, to your first steps, to the class libraries. So this is a great place to start on how to use RAD PHP XE. The entire RAD PHP Component Library Reference Guide is also here, and the complete PHP manual is here. And up on our Embarcadero website, if you go to RAD PHP in action, there's a link up there. There are many good videos and white papers and tutorials to help you get past the learning curve.
Okay. If I have an existing PHP, can I drop one script in and ask RAD PHP to suck in the related files?
It would do it like this. So if I go, am I still sharing? Share my desktop. If we go back to PHP. So I'm in PHP. Let me close this all. So the answer is, it's going to need to know the source location for those files. So if I close all of this, do I have it on here? My e-commerce example. So for example, when if I open up, well, actually if I go to my open a project, actually let me do it this way. So let's say you have an existing file, And just like I did, actually we could probably do it this way. So let's say you have one existing file you want to add to this. Look, actually, if I go back to my, let me close this. If I go back to the programmer's TV shows project we were working, if we go back to, I need to add. So in your case, you have an extra file you want to add in here. I have that iTunes file. I need to add that iTunes web service I want to add in here. So if I come up to my programmers and I want to say I want to add a new unit, and I'm going to give this a name of, and you give it the location of what it is. So let's say I'm going to rename this as my iTunes include file. But in your case, you've got a file. You can say I can add an individual file to it. I can add one file to it. So I can add one file to it or many files to it, or I can add an complete folder for that project. So add an individual file, add one file, or add a bunch of files. Because as you add these files, if you look at the index PHP, it wants to know where to find this. It wants to know where to find these files. Okay.
Okay, and this is the last question as of right now. I think it kind of goes along with what you just said. But if you don't have time to demo the connection to iTunes web services, can you provide pointer to information on using web services with RAD PHP?
Yes. So, one good place to look for that. Take a look. If we go to RAD PHP, I'm in here. File, close all, save changes. Sure. Do I have it showed here? TV shows. If you look on, so this is the application we actually ship with. So it's called TV shows living in our demos folder. And if we look at the code, so when I click on this button called search, right here we included this iTunes include PHP. So this is a web service from iTunes, which is right here. So I added this iTunes web.
Al, you're not showing your desktop.
Oh, sorry about that. All that good stuff. Okay, so I'm looking at the. So this is the actual TV shows application we ship with inside of RAD PHP. So when I click on the search button here, it includes the iTunes web service that actually goes out and gets information. So by simply calling that, and it actually looks like this. So here's the iTunes web service that has methods of get a show list and get the TV show information. So it includes with these two methods. So when I come back here and I look at its design and I click on this button called search, it says create a new instance of the iTunes class. And then once you do that, once you call iTunes here, you can call its method. So by executing its get show list, and this toSearch is going to be the information it got from the text box we searched in, and what gets returned back is the total number of episodes it showed. So as simple as that is how quickly you can use a web service inside of RAD PHP.
Seeing no more questions, we'd like to wrap up today by thank you all for attending, and to contact us, info@programmers.com or 800-221-7710, and again, we'd like to thank Al from Embarcadero for conducting today's webinar, and have a great day. Thanks.